Afghanistan's history until the last century has been primarily ruled by foreigners. That ended when they waged 3 wars on their rulers in Britain in the 19th and 20th centuries, the last of which was successful. Afghanistan had finally gained statehood. What followed was the all too familiar period of disarray that many new countries go through. They went from a monarchy to a constitutional monarchy to communism to a fundamentalist regime. But let's focus for a moment on the transition from communism to Muslim fundamentalism. The Soviet Union occupied Afghanistan from 1979 until 1989 in an attempt to save the, at the time, communist government. There were 3 main groups within Afghanistan that were against the Soviets: the secular nationalists, the religious conservatives, and the Muslim fundamentalists. The international community decided to provide supplies to the fundamentalists because they thought they would be the least likely to give in to the Soviets. The Soviets soon left, and the new fundamentalist regime took power. Within this regime stemmed rivalries that escalated into chaos and eventually a war that displaced over 4 million people. This conflict ended, however, when the military, who called themselves the Taliban, took power and promised peace. They were widely accepted because the people thought that their rule would usher in a new period of stability that hadn't been seen since the King Shahir Shah's rule, which ended decades earlier. The Taliban enforced strict laws and enforced those laws with public executions and cruel punishment. They stripped women of their rights and killed anyone who blocked their path. After years of suffering and hardship for the Afghan people, the Taliban were overthrown in 2001. Since then, democratic elections have been held, and the U.S. peacekeeping troops are still stationed in the country. Afghanistan is a multinational state. There are 3 main ethnic groups that comprise over 80% of the population. The Pashtuns are Afghanistan's most ancient people, who have inhabited the area since at least 5700 BCE. Majority Sunni Muslim and speakers of the Pashto language, the Pashtuns follow a code of behavior that has been tied to the ethnic group for thousands of years. This behavior code, known as Pashtunwali, or the Way of the Pashtuns, became heavily intertwined with Islam when the Pashtuns converted to the religion. Pashtuns are not just in Afghanistan, but are spread throughout Central Asia, and have especially strong influences in Pakistan. There is a historically nomadic sect of the Pashtun ethnicity, called the Kuchi, who dwell in the northern and central part of Afghanistan, far from the other Pashtun who live in the south. Next are the Tajiks, who make up just over a quarter of the population. They are Sunni Muslims and, like the Pashtuns, ancient inhabitants of the region. Tajiks also dwell in eastern Iran as well as Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. They speak a dialect of Persian. Despite making up such a large portion of the area, they have not once ruled it in modern history. Their origins fall into livestock herding, and they dwell in the northern parts of Afghanistan. Finally are the Hazaras, who are believed to be descendants of Mongolians and who once ruled the region. They have been in the region since the 12th century. They are Shia Muslims and often looked down upon as outsiders because of this. Although they do speak Persian, it is a different dialect than that of the Tajiks. They live in central Afghanistan and account for about 15% of the population.
There are a few reasons for the conflicts that are happening in Afghanistan. The Hazara and Kuchi people go to war around the May and April months every year because of land rights. The Kuchi people say they have documents from the Afghan government that proves the land belongs to them. The 2 groups need space to let their animals graze. This has caused fighting and a few deaths. The deaths aren't a huge number, with the number only being in the tens, but hundreds have been injured and thousands have left the area in search of safer places. The Taliban are one of the biggest and most well-known extremist groups. They are involved with many deaths of the Hazara people. The Taliban are Sunni Muslims and they follow the Quran very strictly. The Hazara are Shiite Muslims. They are being killed for religious differences. The Hazara also have a unique appearance because of the area's history of being controlled by the Mongols. The Hazara look more like the Mongols than their Afghan brothers and sisters. This makes them easy to spot by the Taliban. In terms of outside influence, the UN has stepped in to supply food to any refugees that the Taliban attacks. They have supplied food for 160,000 people. The Pakistani government agrees with the Taliban's ideas and views. Pakistan gives financial support to the Taliban, which allows them to buy more weapons and inflict more damage. After the 9/11 attacks, the United States got involved and began to fight against the Taliban. As of 2012, about 2,000 American soldiers have been killed, while the number of Taliban and Al-Qaeda fatalities stand at around 22,000.
The Hindu Kush Mountains run from the northeast to the southeast, leaving northwest and southern plains. Near the mountains, deadly earthquakes occur, and flooding and occasional droughts occur throughout the country. The country has experienced gradual decrease in arable land over the past few decades, putting an even higher value on land with good soil. Understanding the geography of Afghanistan can show us not only where these groups live, but also the natural conditions in which they are living. It can also show us the valuable land that many ethnic groups in Afghanistan so desperately desire. Finally, by understanding the geography, we can see the differences between these groups' lives that cause the lack of cooperation.